How does a guy who acts like this...
Just how old are you?
19.
Bingo! Just over the legal limit.
also end up doing stuff like this? Well, that's what happens when you give a teaching license to an actual nut job. Meet Eikichi Onizuka, a former biker gang leader who somehow decided that his true calling in life is teaching teenagers. Of course, he doesn't get normal students. Nah, he ends up with the most unhinged class of brats you can imagine. These kids aren't just troublemakers, they're straight up psychotic. So, Onizuka has to use his own brand of wild and ridiculous teaching methods to survive. Yeah, we're in for a real adventure.
Who are you?
Teacher.
Before we jump in though, I just want to warn you that this show is a relic of the past. And it sure has its awkward moments. Sometimes it pushes the whole fan service with teens thing way too far. But if you can look past that, it'll be mostly alright, I guess? Alright, that's enough of that. Let's jump right in. In the first episode, called GTO The Legend Begins, we meet 22-year-old Eikichi Onizuka at a shopping mall, doing what any responsible aspiring teacher would do, taking quick glances at girls' underwear. Yeah, real classy start. But hey, it's his first day as a teacher in training, so what could possibly go wrong? Well, two nosy guys at the mall catch him ogling at the girls and try to blackmail him for hush money.
Or he can give us his wallet and we'll forget the whole thing. Otherwise, we'll hand you over to the police right after we kick your butt.
Unbeknownst to them, Onizuka isn't just a perv. He's also a martial artist. So he promptly beats them up and bolts away to school. When he gets to the school, he thinks he's landed in heaven. There are cute girls, short skirts, you get the drill. Unfortunately, he's assigned to Class O, aka the trash bin of the school. Every boy in there is a gremlin. They're rude, loud, ugly, and frankly, just asking to be punched in the face. The worst part is that there are hardly any girls, and the few that are there wear long skirts and have all the charm of a wet paper bag. Yeah, that's what Onizuka thinks anyway. But during lectures, a cute girl named Nanako Mizuki stands up to answer a question, and Onizuka is instantly hooked. She later tells him that she needs private tutoring at his house. Sounds sketchy, but Onizuka's brain checks out the moment his ding-dong hormones check in. And she's like 16, by the way, so it's super duper gross. Ew. That evening, Mizuki shows up, cooks him dinner, and tells a story about her parents trying to force her into an arranged marriage. Yikes! She starts crying, and then out of nowhere, starts to undress. Once Onizuka is in the most compromising position, three delinquent boys burst in through the window with cameras. Yeah, it is all a well-coordinated setup. The delinquents demand 1,000,000 yen, and Mizuki's taking a 25% cut. Big oof. But nobody scams Onizuka and just leaves scot-free. So later that night, with the help of a biker gang, Onizuka tortures the ever-living crap out of those boys. Oh, and by the way, Onizuka used to lead a biker gang before he turned his life around. So you'll be seeing cameos of biker gangs well throughout the show. Anyway, the next day, those same delinquent boys are seen scrubbing the floors and worshipping Onizuka like some kind of god. Thanks to getting tortured, the delinquents have turned Class O into a beacon of discipline and academic excellence. After class, Mizuki manages to sweet-talk Onizuka into a joyride and suggests that they retire to his place afterward. Onizuka, learning from his past mistake, shuts it down real quick. She jumps off the moving bike in protest, but he catches her just in time. Right there on the sidewalk, Mizuki breaks down in tears. Turns out her home life is a huge mess. Her rich parents live in a mansion where they argue constantly and sleep in separate rooms divided by a giant wall. She misses the good old days when they were poor, but at least they had dinner together. Onizuka listens and then just drives off alone. The episode then ends with our student teacher barging into Mizuki's home, smashing down the troublesome wall with a sledgehammer, literally tearing down the emotional divide with brute force. I guess the lesson of the day is to invoke demolition if therapy doesn't work. The next episode is titled Enter Uchiyamada, and Onizuka is done being a teacher in training. He's now hoping to apply for a job at Holy Forest Academy, an elite private school. We see him riding a train to the school's location when he notices a gorgeous woman, Azusa Fuyutsuki. While he's checking her out, a random creep accidentally faceplants into her behind. Jeez! Onizuka, being a self-proclaimed protector of women, ironic, I know, calls out the perv very publicly. Azusa thanks him, but the real surprise comes minutes later when they both show up at Holy Forest Academy applying for teaching jobs. And guess who's in charge of their interview? Yeah, the train creep himself. His name is Uchiyamada, and he's the vice principal of the academy. He ends up failing our MC because his job application is full of spelling errors. Now defeated, Onizuka starts venting his soul to a school canteen lady, the kind that looks like she knows way too much. He rants about how teachers in his childhood always called him garbage, treated him like trash, and made him feel worthless. You know, just your average lunch break trauma dump. Just then, 3 former Holy Forest students storm into the school looking for Uchiyamada. Apparently, he used to call them trash, and now they want payback. Onizuka decides to step in and says he'll protect the vice principal on the one condition that he gets hired as a teacher. Uchiyamada cowardly uses Onizuka as a human shield and continues to insult the former students. But the moment Uchiyamada drops the T-word, trash, Onizuka instantly flips out.
Those pieces of trash are not even our students here anymore! Don't just stand there! What in the world are you waiting for? Come on!
He turns on Uchiyamada and delivers a beautiful German suplex that sends the man crashing into the ground. With that singular act, Onizuka's dreams of becoming a teacher seem officially dead. He simply gives up and becomes a truck driver. But just when you think he's out of the game, his best bro, Ryuji Danma, calls him up one day with good news. He's got one last shot at the job, but he has to make it to Holy Forest Academy in 3 hours. There's one problem though. It's an 8-hour trip back to the academy. So Onizuka does what any law-abiding citizen would do. He turns the truck around and barrels through the narrow city streets, running red lights and gathering a police escort on some Fast and Furious type speed run. He crashes, almost literally, into Holy Forest Academy, where he's met by the same canteen lady from earlier. Turns out she's not just a lunch lady. She's Ryoko Sakurai, the chairwoman of the entire school, and she was watching him the whole time to see what kind of person he really was. Clearly, she liked what she saw and immediately offers him the job. Eikichi Onizuka is officially a teacher, and he shares the good news with his good buddy Ryuji and now co-worker Miss Azusa Fuyutsuki. May God help this school. Episode 3 is called Late Night Roof Diving, and we start with Vice Principal Uchiyamada lovingly admiring his new shiny Toyota Cresta, the car of his dreams. He's soaking in the moment until Onizuka shows up and nearly crashes into it with a massive truck full of luggage. Turns out Onizuka's been allowed to live on school grounds. Yeah, the school thought it was a great idea to give a job and free accommodation to a man that once suplexed their vice principal. Anyway, while dragging his stuff inside, Onizuka meets a quiet, shy student named Noboru Yoshikawa, who helps him move into the new apartment. Well, it's more like the school's storage closet, full of boxes and dust and no beds. Onizuka hates it here, but he does feel better after he and Noboru start bonding over video games.
What are you doing? Can't you see that I'm trying to be depressed over here?
Meanwhile, Uchiyamada is still salty over that German suplex, so he gets revenge by dumping Onizuka in the middle school division instead of high school, making him the homeroom teacher of class 3-4, the same cursed classroom known for chewing up and spitting out teachers. In fact, one teacher ended up in the hospital, and another one straight up disappeared. Yikes! Onizuka doesn't even get a chance to settle in before something tragic happens. Later that night, he spots Noboru standing on the balcony, ready to jump to his death. Onizuka rushes in to stop him, but because Onizuka's clumsy as hell, they both end up tumbling off the balcony and crash right into Uchiyamada's new cresta. Ow! After that very painful landing, Onizuka gives Noboru a ride home on his motorbike. That's when Noboru finally opens up about his personal struggle. He's being bullied by a girl. Onizuka is clearly surprised and low-key embarrassed on Noboru's behalf, but he tells the kid something simple and true. Tomorrow can always be better, so don't give up just yet. Aww. So, by the end of the episode, Onizuka has destroyed a luxury car, inherited a cursed classroom, and stopped a suicide attempt, all while living in a school closet. Not bad for his first day. The next episode is called The Secret Life of Onizuka, and it doesn't take very long before our MC learns the kind of dirty tricks Class 3-4 students are capable of. It all starts one morning when Onizuka walks towards a notice board and finds a photoshopped image of himself doing, let's just say, some very adult stuff involving leather, whips, and chains.
Come on, man, it can't be that bad. That's pretty bad.
Jeez. It's clearly fake, but try convincing Miss Azusa and a bunch of middle schoolers who'll believe anything. But wait, cause it gets worse. Later on, another masterpiece appears. A naked Onizuka posing next to a very naked Vice Principal Uchiyamada, taped proudly to the classroom wall. When Uchiyamada sees it, he absolutely loses his mind. He's already lost his car, and now this? As far as he's concerned, Onizuka has destroyed his dignity and his heterosexual image. So Uchiyamada does what any reasonable school administrator would do. He develops stage 4 Onizuka derangement syndrome. He becomes a full-time hater and stalker, determined to catch Onizuka in a scandal and get him fired once and for all. Soon after, a third humiliating photo starts going viral around the school. This one shows Onizuka with his co-worker Azusa in what looks like a sketchy red light district. Azusa is so shocked, she slaps him across the face and runs off in tears. Ouch! Meanwhile, our shy friend Noboru finds out who's been behind all of the embarrassing pictures. It's a bunch of students from class 3-4. He goes to tell Onizuka, but Onizuka stops him mid-sentence. Why? Because Onizuka hates snitches. Still, he gets the drift. Some people from his homeroom class are behind all of this digital drama. Onizuka then goes to smoke them out by himself. He finds the ringleader of the delinquent crew, Yoshito Kikuchi, and instead of being mad at him, he's surprisingly impressed. Turns out the kid's a Photoshop wizard, so Onizuka strikes a deal with the kid. Take 2,000 yen, and in return, the kid must use his skills for good. And by good, I mean fake photos of Onizuka hanging out with celebrities. Now that's a recruitment strategy only Great Teacher Onizuka could pull off. The man's not just surviving class 3-4, he's starting to beat them at their own game. The next episode is titled, An Eye for an Eye, a Butt for a Butt. And yes, it's exactly as chaotic as it sounds. We start off with Vice Principal Uchiyamada, who finally manages to fix his beloved cresta. He's feeling pretty proud of himself and hopeful that maybe, just maybe, this will help him win back the love and respect of his estranged wife and daughter. And for a moment there, things actually seem to be going his way. Unfortunately though, not everyone's having a great time. time. Poor Noboru is getting absolutely wrecked by Anko Uehara and her gang. Why? Just because he's been hanging out with Onizuka. They beat him up, strip him naked, and take humiliating photos of him. Then they threaten to leak the pics if they ever catch him talking to Onizuka again.
Our work is done here. Let's go. It's time for karaoke.
Oh yeah, what do you think I should sing?
God damn! Middle school is wild! Noboru, crushed and humiliated, tries to take his own life again by jumping from the school balcony. But Onizuka, always watching from somewhere, seriously, how does he always do that? Races in and manages to catch him mid-air, though Uchiyamada's newly repaired Cresta takes the fall instead. That poor car never stood a chance. Now, Onizuka's furious. No more chill guy. He traces the bullying back to Anko and her little crew. He then confronts them, ties them up, and gives them a good old spankin', and hands Noboru a camera to take their embarrassing photos.
Our work is done here. Come on, pal.
You asshole! You really think you're gonna get away with this?
But in the end, Noboru forgets the camera. Not that it matters, however. Onizuka reveals he never intended to use the pics for revenge. He just wanted to teach them a lesson. And just when things seem to calm down, the episode ends as Anko's mom shows up at the school, accusing Onizuka of her daughter, and asks to see the chairwoman. Okay, Karen. The 6th episode is called Conspiracies All Around. Anko's mom, Mrs. Uehara, storms into the chairwoman's office demanding Onizuka's immediate dismissal. She claims he's a pervert and a danger to the students, but the chairwoman says she wants to hear Onizuka's side of the story first. Only problem, Onizuka's laid up in the hospital after jumping off a balcony to save Noboru from offing himself. Crazy that this has happened twice already. Mrs. Uehara, not one to back down, uses her position as president of the PTA to call a special meeting. Her goal is simple: rally the parents, expose Onizuka, and get him kicked out of the school once and for all. At the meeting, Onizuka, in typical Onizuka fashion, tries to settle things by proposing a game. Unsurprisingly, the idea tanks. The vote comes in, and it looks like he's done for. Just then, Noboru walks up to the stage and starts undressing in front of everyone. Huh? It's shocking, but he's not doing it for fun. He reveals the bruises, the injuries, the full aftermath of what Anko and her friends did to him.
Before you and the others fire, Mr. Onizuka, take a look at the bruises, cuts, and scratches all over my body.
It's undeniable proof. Mrs. Uehara tries to protect her daughter's image, still acting like it's all a big conspiracy. Then, Yoshito steps up with the knockout blow, an audio recording of Anko and her crew laughing and bragging about the whole bullying session. And as if that's not brutal enough, he even edited in a part where Anko mocks her own mom, calling her gullible for believing her innocent act. Oof. In the end, Onizuka keeps his job. Noboru gets justice. Mrs. Uehara is left humiliated, and Uchiyamada is left fuming in the background because Onizuka has survived another hit job. The next episode is called The Mother of All Crushes. It's parent-teacher visit season at Holy Forest Academy, the time of the year when teachers drop by students' homes to bond with their families. But one student, Kunio Murai, is in full panic mode. He's terrified that Onizuka will show up at his house and hit on his mom. Why? Because she's young, single, and still very much turning heads. And knowing Onizuka, Kunio's fear is very real. At first, Onizuka couldn't care less about home visits. He assumes all the moms are in their 40s and not worth the effort. But when he hears that Kunio's mom, Julia Murai, is in her 20s and hot, suddenly he's the most enthusiastic teacher in the district.
Besides that, she's really hot, and I'm pretty sure she's single, too.
What? Really?
With help from Noboru, Onizuka tracks down Julia's house. But when he shows up and starts gawking at her photo, Julia, understandably, assumes he's a total creep and hits him right there where the sun don't shine. A full force, not shot. After recovering, Onizuka manages to explain that he's Kunio's homeroom teacher and he's there for an official home visit. Things take a turn when Kunio walks in and sees his mom hanging out with Onizuka. He starts melting down because his worst nightmare is playing out in real time. Eventually though, Julia and Onizuka end up going on a date, which sends Kunio over the edge. To stop them from linking up again, Kunio challenges Onizuka to a video game duel. If Onizuka wins, Onizuka has to stay away from his mom forever. Unfortunately for Kunio, Onizuka crushes him in the game. Being a sore loser, Kunio handcuffs Onizuka to a statue and makes a dramatic escape with his friends on their bikes. Onizuka catches up eventually, just as the whole gang bumps into Julia. And here's the twist. We learn that Onizuka isn't trying to date Julia after all. He's simply just visiting the homes of students with single mothers. He calls it a dating-style home visit that's mostly tailored towards the hot moms. In other words, the great teacher wins another round. Episode 8 is titled Bungee Jumping Made Easy. We begin with Julia Murai taking her son Kunio and his buddies Fujiyoshi and Kusano out for a nice, chill bowling night. However, to Kunio's absolute horror, she also invites Onizuka along for the ride. Cause the more, the merrier. Midway through the hangout, Julia gets called away for work, leaving Onizuka alone and in charge of 3 teenagers in a bowling alley. What could possibly go wrong? Well, for starters, Kunio acts like a sore loser again after losing a game, and so he glues Onizuka's hands to a bowling ball.
I just put a few drops of crazy glue into each of the finger holes, you dumbass! You did what? You'll have to spend the rest of your life like a Doraemon!
Later that night, while heading home, the boys run into a group of street punks who've somehow made away with the Vice Principal Uchiyamada's precious Toyota Cresta. The punks begin to harass and threaten the delinquent teens, and just as things are about to get ugly, Onizuka shows up like some kind of superhero, with his hands still glued to the bowling balls. But instead of fighting the punks, he has an even wilder idea. He dares them to toss Kunio off a bridge with a bungee cord. Jesus! Kunio is obviously shocked and scared shitless, but after Onizuka tells him to stop acting like a wimp and show some guts, the kid takes up the challenge. He tells Onizuka that he will even jump willingly, on the condition that he stays away from his mom. Of course.
Okay, if I jump, you never ever lay your hands on my mother again!
And so, Kunio actually jumps off the bridge, but thanks to the bungee rope, his life is left hanging by a literal thread. Wow. Afterward, Onizuka then suggests that the punk leader also do the same jump after Kunio. After all, they're all standing on the bridge and having some fun. The guy takes one look at the bungee rope, panics, and runs off with his crew like a scared little chicken. I guess the lesson for the day is, not every problem has to be solved with physical violence. Sometimes you gotta jump off a bridge on a freaking dare and watch your enemies scram. The next episode, titled Onizuka and the Art of War, kicks off with Anko Uehara's friend Miyabi Aizawa getting very suspicious about Kunio. She's noticed Kunio isn't as hostile toward Onizuka as before, and she's scared he might end up like their former tech bro ally Yoshito, who's now switched sides completely and is actually helping Onizuka. Meanwhile, Onizuka and the physical education teacher, Mr. Fukuroda, are in a full-on feud after Onizuka accidentally blasts an experimental rocket right into the guy's face. Tisk tisk. Fukuroda, feeling furious and humiliated, challenges him to a swimming contest. But every race ends the same way, with Onizuka wiping the floor with him every single time. Embarrassed and desperate, Fukuroda decides the only explanation is that Onizuka must be juiced on dope.
But how? How can a guy who smokes swim 50 meters without taking a breath? Drugs! Huh? You're on dope!
Holy copium! Over on Miyabi's side, she hatches a plan to ruin Onizuka by framing him as an underwear thief. Damn! Her weapon of choice is Tomoko Nomura, a 14-year-old girl with big rockers and not a lot going on upstairs. I cannot believe I just said that. But I swear, they're her words, not mine. Anyway, the plan requires precision, you see. Unfortunately, Tomoko's precision involves shoving the stolen panties into the wrong locker belonging to Mr. Fukuroda. When the word gets out that there's a panty thief in school, Fukuroda jumps at the chance to lead the investigation, hoping to reclaim some lost aura after getting destroyed in the pool. The student lockers turn up nothing, so Miyabi suggests they check the teachers' lockers. Fukuroda goes straight for Onizuka's, but Onizuka refuses, mostly because it's crammed with his own dirty underwear. When Onizuka's mess is revealed, Fukuroda takes the chance to mock him and tries to prove that his own locker is spotless, only to open it and find the stolen panties staring right back at him.
Oh no! They're really here!
Well, aren't you gonna show me your locker?
Oh boy. Now, Fukuroda's not just the guy who got wrecked in the pool, he's also the school's panty thief. Ew. Miyabi, furious at Tomoko's blunder, tears into her and ends their friendship, effective immediately. Once again, the great teacher survives another hit job by sheer luck. The next episode, titled Outside Looking In, kicks off with Tomoko feeling pretty down in the dumps. Her childhood friend Miyabi has officially dumped her, and to make things worse, her old girlfriends are now bullying her like it's a full-time job. Onizuka takes notice that she's struggling and decides to play the role of morale booster. His master plan involves signing Tomoko up for a beauty pageant as her producer. Great. Meanwhile, Miyabi gets dragged into the same pageant against her will because her friends secretly put her name down. At first, she's annoyed about being forced in, but then she decides to make the most of it and uses it as an excuse to avoid Onizuka's class. However, her mood goes absolutely nuclear when she finds out her ex-bestie Tomoko is being hyped up by Onizuka at the star of the pageant. It's safe to say this beauty contest is about to get real ugly. Episode 11 is called To Be Idolized by a Nation. We learn that Tomoko keeps trying to patch things up with Miyabi, telling her she's the prettiest one there and hoping she wins. But Miyabi reacts colder than a freezer in Antarctica. She's not having it. The beauty contest kicks off with 3 different challenges. 1. Talk about yourself. 2. Sing a random song. And 3. Act out a fake phone call scene. Tomoko, well, let's just say she's not the sharpest cookie in the shed. So she stumbles through the first 2 challenges like she's never seen a stage in her life.
Number 18 and I'm gonna sing! Okie dokie, I'm ready.
Then comes the phone call scene. Tomoko's so nervous, she's about ready to tap out, but Onizuka tells her to forget the pre-written script and just talk to Miyabi from the heart. And she does, pretending to call Miyabi and spilling every honest feeling she's been holding back. She reminisces about their childhood, wishing Miyabi the best, and basically saying a tearful goodbye. Ooh boy, and does the crowd eat that up. By the end, however, Tomoko doesn't even crack the top 3 finalists. But guess who's all over the news? Yup, her raw, emotional moment makes Tomoko the star of the show, and she even scores a movie producer's contact info. Wow. Meanwhile, Onizuka's already cashing in, literally, by selling Tomoko merchandise before her 15 minutes of fame is even up. The next episode is titled The Formula for Treachery. You remember that expression that sometimes love comes from the weirdest places? Yeah, sometimes it comes from Suguru Teshigawara, a math teacher whose idea of romance is secretly snapping hundreds of pictures of Miss Azusa from his apartment window.
There she is, my Azusa.
Yeah, definitely not creepy at all. The only thing standing between him and his dream girl is Onizuka. And that's simply because Onizuka has slowly but surely grown to become Azusa's male bestie and confidant at the academy. It's precisely due to their close friendship that Teshigawara hates Onizuka's guts. Great, another person who has RMC in their hit list. After much consideration, Teshigawara finally cooks cooks up his big move. Invite Azusa over to his place through some excuse, then wow her by pulling a rope from the ceiling, which will drop a curtain revealing every single photo he's ever taken of her. Are you really sure about that, my guy? Teshigawara knows that if he pulls that rope, there's a not so tiny chance that she might think he's a psycho stalker. And hey, in my opinion, she'd be right. Anywho, on that faithful day of the visit, fate just has to play a cruel joke and Onizuka shows up instead. Apparently, Azusa had an emergency and sent Onizuka to pick up a laptop Teshigawara promised her. So, while looking around the apartment, Onizuka spots the mysterious rope, and him being Onizuka, he immediately tries to pull it. Teshigawara freaks the F out, grabs the nearest weapon, and starts chasing Onizuka before the situation can get any worse, and Onizuka barely escapes. But now, Teshigawara has suffered multiple injuries from the skirmish, so he starts plotting revenge. However, knowing Onizuka's track record in dodging any form of accountability, I wouldn't put too much stock in Mr. Stalker here. Episode 13. Titled Only the Best Will Do, is where Teshigawara's petty revenge tour really kicks off. He first shows up to school with his hand in a cast, and Azusa, ever the sweetheart, offers to come over to his place that night and cook for him. Aww. Behind the scenes, Teshigawara's already busy plotting to get Onizuka fired, and his so-called plan is to call in a parent lobby group to investigate Onizuka's unprofessional behavior at school. And wouldn't you know it, the first thing their leader, Mrs. Ota, sees when she walks into the classroom is Onizuka wearing an elephant trunk costume on his crotch.
This is it.
Elephant, elephant, and a flush, I'll make a splash.
Jeez, not a great first impression. Then, he accidentally squirts some water on Mrs. Ota. The panic-stricken woman faints on the spot, and Vice Principal Uchiyamada decides this is the last straw. Onizuka is done. What the what? Anyway, after Azusa intervenes on Onizuka's behalf, Uchiyamada and Mrs. Ota agree to set an academic challenge to prove whether Onizuka is qualified to continue teaching. Onizuka can either resign amicably from the academy, or he must pass a junior high standardized test. And no, it's not just about passing the test. He must pass with the highest score in the entire nation. Okay, that seems like a tall order, but there's no way Onizuka's just going to quit teaching, so he starts prepping for the test. And when he does try a mock test, he scores a whopping 49 out of 500. Yeah, bro's cooked. Meanwhile, Azusa calls Teshigawara to cancel their home dinner arrangement, but a girl named Hidemi answers his phone instead. Turns out, she's Mrs. Ota's daughter, and she treats Teshigawara like her personal butler, even making him lick her foot for fun. She's apparently the reason he even got this job at Holy Forest Academy in the first place, after introducing him to her parents and recommending him. Later on, Onizuka meets the same Hidemi and she seems willing to help. She convinces her mom to save his job if he licks her foot to show respect.
It's very simple. Just lick my foot. Once you have become my pet, I'll see to it that you're not fired.
Aye. Onizuka's answer is to pick her up like a ragdoll, give her a quick spanking, and tell her to watch her mouth around adults. Okay. This act of utter humiliation sends Hidemi into a severe state of Onizuka derangement syndrome. Damn, our MC's haters just keep on piling up! Episode 14, titled Between a Rock and a Hard Place, kicks off with Onizuka sweating bullets over the upcoming test. A handful of students, yes, even Kunio, step in to help because they don't want their crazy teacher fired. As they're drilling him, Azusa strolls in and casually suggests that Onizuka stay at her place for a week so they can study together. Naturally, Onizuka's brain short circuits, cause, well, he's Onizuka. At Azusa's apartment, he starts studying harder than ever and writing sample tests. Unfortunately, his grades still look very tragic, so he decides to keep himself awake and study all night by doing something genius. That means injuring himself to the point of bleeding so that the pain keeps him from falling asleep.
That should do it. Now I definitely won't be falling asleep this time.
Mr. Onizuka, I think you're pushing a little too hard. You don't need to torture yourself to stay awake.
Yikes. Meanwhile, Miyabi catches wind of Kunio's latest plot to help Onizuka. Kunio plans on stealing the test questions from the admin office. Yoshito says it's a terrible idea, but Kunio's all ready to rumble. Later that night, Kunio, Fujiyoshi, and Kusano throw on some masks and sneak into the admin office, only to walk right into Miyabi's trap. Security officers ambush the boys and are about to unmask them when suddenly the lights go out, all thanks to Yoshito coming in clutch. The boys are able to make a clean escape. When Onizuka finds out what Kunio and his friends tried to do, he's not exactly thrilled. He tells them straight up that he can just handle his own problems. Then comes the day of the test, and Onizuka runs into Hidemi again, who, for the second time, asks him to lick her feet in exchange for fixing his problem. Onizuka tells her to find a dog instead and then walks away. Mere seconds later, Hidemi finds herself at the mercy of dangerous kidnappers. Now, guess who abandons the test of a lifetime and instead goes in pursuit of the kidnappers? You guessed it, it's the Great Teacher himself. The next episode, called The Great Sacrifice, kicks off with Onizuka still chasing Hidemi's kidnappers on a stolen bike. The crooks try to shake him off by slamming on the brakes, and this causes Onizuka to crash into their car. The stolen bike gets smacked away, and the thugs think they've lost their stalker. Unbeknownst to them, he's literally chilling on the roof of their car. Meanwhile, at the academy, Azusa and a few students are starting to fear the worst. If Onizuka doesn't show up soon, he's officially fired. Yikes! Back at the kidnapper's hideout, Hidemi is being held as leverage. Her captors plan to force her dad, who's a local politician, to meet their demands about a construction project under his supervision.
We're doing this as a kind of special request. A certain someone simply wants your papa to do him a little favor in the field he supervises. That's all there is to it. Hey, bring the video camera!
But just as they're about to film a hostage video, Onizuka swoops in, steals the camera, and single-handedly knocks out every thug in the room except their leaders. The leader pulls a gun, fires, and BAM! We cut away before seeing what happened. Back at school, Vice Principal Uchiyamada is practically dancing at the thought of Onizuka failing the test and getting booted for good. But there's just 1 hour left before the test comes to an end, when Onizuka storms into the classroom, carrying an unconscious Hidemi like it's no big deal. He sits down, scribbles through the test at lightning speed, and then collapses on his desk. Everyone rushes over, thrilled that he made it just in time, until they discover that he's bleeding heavily. Yeah, the guy's been shot 3 times and never made a single fuss about it. God damn! Luckily, Onizuka survives after a hospital trip. When the academic test results come in, everyone's jaw hits the floor. Onizuka miraculously scored a perfect 500. What the what? Even Yoshito, who secretly switched their papers and boosted his grade to a 490, is left confused. Turns out, Chairwoman Sakurai rigged the test. Why? Because she believes the school can't afford to lose a teacher like him.
I cannot tell you enough how much our school needs a teacher like Onizuka. I only wish there were others here just like him.
Aww. Onizuka may be chaotic at first glance, but there's really a method to all that madness. Later, Hidemi's parents arrive to personally thank their daughter's savior, but Onizuka is nowhere to be found. He's already busted out of the hospital and is living his best life, stuffing his face with food like nothing ever happened. What a Chad! Episode 16 is called Beauty plus Brains equals a dangerous mix. So after stopping the kidnapping of a politician's daughter, Onizuka has become a media hero of sorts. And in classic Onizuka fashion, he uses this moment of fame to publicly advertise for a girlfriend on national TV. Priorities, am I right? Meanwhile, because stealing panties didn't work out so well in the past, Miyabi decides this is the perfect time to take Onizuka down again. Her weapon of choice, Urumi Kanzaki, a blonde, gorgeous, manipulative student who could probably sell you your own wallet. She pretends to be interested in Onizuka, gets him to take her to a laundromat, and somehow manages to convince him to put on a skimpy leather getup, complete with a whip. Before he can even blink, she runs off screaming to the cops, claiming Onizuka tried to take advantage of her. The next day, the school's buzzing with gossip about the incident, and surprise, surprise, Urumi shows up in class for the first time in forever, and she claims that Onizuka is the sole reason she's coming back. Onizuka's ready to get his revenge, but before he can finish a sentence, Urumi somehow gets a snake to slither up and bite him right on his family jewels. Luckily, it's not venomous, just really traumatic. Later in the staff room, a horrified teacher announces Urumi's return like it's the start of a natural disaster. Azusa looks quite confused as to what all the fuss is about. She's a newbie teacher, and Urumi appears quite harmless. But soon, she finds out why the other teachers dread having Urumi in their class. Soon enough, it's her turn to teach Class 3-4, and here's how the first Urumi-Azusa interaction goes down. Azusa is teaching a topic about Confucius and his teachings. Urumi raises her hand and gives a very drawn-out interpretation of whatever Confucius said. Then, Urumi asks Azusa for her thoughts on the very long interpretation she gave. Azusa, confused and unable to answer, feels so stupid and humiliated that she decides to pen a resignation letter ASAP.
Huh? Hey, what do you think you're doing? You're turning in a letter of resignation.
Leave me alone! I'd rather die than not be able to answer a question from a student!
Onizuka talks her out of it and decides to deal with Urumi himself. But just as he's about to drag her out of class, Vice Principal Uchi Yamada storms in and explains Urumi has an IQ of 200, a very special individual certified by the Ministry of Education, meaning the school will have to put up with anything she does. But Onizuka's done with this brat's little games, so he gives her the one-finger salute right in front of the class.
Oh, you're gonna learn a lot from me, young lady. How about we start with sign language?
Our boy is officially fed up. In the next episode, titled Falling for the Great Onizuka, Yoshito tells Onizuka that Urumi had a really rough childhood that has shaped the way she is now. Although he doesn't get the full story, Onizuka decides he's going to help her in his own unique way. He takes her to a ramen shop where, over steaming bowls, Urumi says teachers always ditch their students when things get a little rough. Onizuka swears he will never abandon any of his students. Urumi decides to test that promise by casually throwing a wine bottle at a crime boss, knocking him out. Onizuka instantly panics, grabs her, and runs straight to the academy like a man fleeing from a loan shark. While he's all terrified, Urumi is laughing her head off. This ticks him off, so he starts walking away until she suddenly threatens to jump off the school balcony. Onizuka then rushes back and restrains her, but Urumi admits she wasn't entirely joking. She's been dealing with depression. Onizuka tells her the leading cause of depression is hunger and offers to take her to dinner. But in true Onizuka fashion, he accidentally pushes her over the edge of the balcony. So now, she's actually falling to her death.
Lucky!
Without thinking, Onizuka jumps too, running down the wall to catch her. What is this guy? The Flash? Anyway, they land on a pile of boxes, which breaks their fall but still knocks Urumi unconscious. Then the police show up, and Onizuka, thinking she's dead, panics again and takes off with her. He actually believes Urumi's lifeless by now, so he finds a quiet spot and starts digging a shallow grave, only to realize he never tried, I don't know, CPR? As he leans in, Urumi suddenly wakes up and teases him about trying to bury her. As punishment for pushing her off the school balcony and nearly burying her alive, Urumi demands that Onizuka become her wish-granting genie. Onizuka is just glad she's alive, so he obliges to her whims. The episode ends with Onizuka taking her on a crazy joyride, which she calls the best moment of her life. It's a surprisingly sweet ending, given all the crazy shit that just happened. The next episode is titled, How to Dine and Dash, and Onizuka is actually taking his wish-granting genie job seriously. He's waking up early, sweeping the school like some janitor, and even taking Urumi and her classmates out for sushi, all on his dime. Unfortunately, when the sushi bill shoots past 100,000 yen, Onizuka decides it's time to activate his ultimate survival skill, sprinting out the door. The sushi shop manager chases him through the streets, but the chase ends abruptly when Onizuka smacks face first into a moving bus. Who's inside the bus? It's our old friend Tomoko, now a semi-famous celebrity. She's on her way to meet her former elementary school teacher for a magazine interview, and she's looking like she just stepped out of a photo shoot. Whoa! It's kinda impressive how far she's come. Talk about character development. Anyway, Tomoko and Urumi haven't seen each other in ages, so they greet each other like a master greeting her pet dog, with Tomoko happily taking the dog role. Oof. Guess she hasn't changed that much, actually. So after the reunion, everyone tags along to Tomoko's old elementary school, which, fun fact, is also Urumi's old stomping ground. Tomoko is over the moon to see her former teacher, Miss Fujimori. Onizuka, ever the opportunist, uses the moment to introduce himself and shamefully plugs his bachelor status.
Let me just powder you. You're so shiny.
Oh, here comes Miss Fujimori. Hi, teacher.
Miss Nomura? Miss Tomoko Nomura?
That's right. It sure is me.
It's been a long time. Have you been well?
Yes, I've been doing great.
Hi, I'm with the magazine Sasha and Toko, and,
How you doing there? My name is Eikichi Onizuka.
But then, Fujimori spots Urumi, and the vibe instantly tanks. She tries to apologize for some mysterious incident from the past, but Urumi responds in French because she's a smartass, whips out a Molotov cocktail like she's in an action movie, and sets it off. Fujimori gets burned, Onizuka gets furious, and when Urumi smugly calls the teacher a slut, Onizuka loses it and slaps her. Dang! In response, Urumi immediately fires him from his genie duties and storms off. Nobody knows what just happened, but Tomoko, now in tears, says Urumi has the same expression she wore years ago, right before she caused an explosion at school. Fearing a repeat performance, Onizuka and the students rush after Urumi, but it's too late. Urumi's already set off explosions in every corner of the academy. How she managed all that in under 5 minutes is anybody's guess, but hey, anime logic, right? In episode 19, titled Private Investigations, the management of Holy Forest Academy is trying to figure out who the hell blew up half the campus. Of course, Onizuka and his student crew already know it was Urumi, they just need the backstory. So, Onizuka, Tomoko, and a few students drop in on Miss Fujimori for some tea and the truth. Fujimori admits that she's the cause of Urumi's teacher-hating problem. 6 years ago, Urumi was a quiet and bright kid who never smiled in class, so Fujimori decided to take her under her wing. The two became study buddies, hanging out at Fujimori's house almost every day. But then, Urumi's brains started running laps around her teachers, and Fujimori got insecure. One day, everything came boiling over when Urumi corrected her in class.
So, what are you trying to do? Question my authority as a teacher? Is that it?
No, teacher. I wasn't doing that at all.
Fujimori snapped and blurted out a personal secret Urumi told her in confidence, right in front of everyone. That betrayal hit hard, especially since Fujimori was like a second mom to her. Urumi's response was to attack teachers and then blow up the school. You know, like any well-adjusted child would do. Determined to fix Urumi's trust no one, blow everything up attitude, Onizuka rolls up to the academy with a biker gang. He basically kidnaps her, ties her up on his motorcycle, and takes her on a fast and reckless journey across the city. Urumi tries to act fearless, but Onizuka keeps poking at her walls until he hits the truth. The truth being that she's still feeling hurt because she actually cared about Fujimori, and that affection she had for the teacher made the subsequent betrayal too hard to get over. Then, in peak Onizuka fashion, he launches the bike off an unfinished flyover. Both of them start plummeting towards the ground when Urumi suddenly sees flashes of her memories with Fujimori and desperately calls out to her teacher Onizuka for help. That's really all the cue he needs. He grabs her and catches onto a giant net held up by his biker buddies on the flyover. By the end of the day, Onizuka tells her to live in the present moment and stop fussing about the past.
You're still a kid. You should act like one. It's easy. All you gotta do is smile and then move on, Kanzaki.
And that brings Onizuka's private tutoring lesson to a close. Hopefully, Urumi just realized that maybe, just maybe, life is worth living without blowing stuff up. Episode 20 is called Love Letter, and it starts with Kunio opening his locker and finding a mysterious love letter signed with the letter F. Naturally, he's convinced that F is none other than Akane Fujita, the girl he's been crushing on for quite a while. Akane's friend, Fuyumi Kujirakawa, soon shows up saying she's there to get Kunio's reply to the letter and pass it along to her friend. Kunio is thrilled and agrees to meet Akane at a recreational park. Meanwhile, Onizuka, who is somehow a single 22-year-old virgin and in no position to be giving love advice whatsoever, decides to become Kunio's personal romance coach. Okay. But here's the catch. The love letter wasn't from Akane at all. It was from Fuyumi, who's been quietly in love with Kunio ever since he saved her from a bunch of juvenile jerks who mocked her incredible height. However, when the big park meetup does happen, Kunio's fantasy crashes and burns. First off, Akane's ex is also in the park and he's trying to patch things up with her. He explains away some suspicious encounter he had with another girl, and that's basically it. Akane gets back together with her ex-boyfriend on the spot and dumps Kunio without even blinking. Fuyumi tries to help Kunio back on his feet after he engages in a brief fight with Akane's boyfriend, but our boy here just wants to be left alone. Emotionally deflated, Kunio pieces together the real truth, that Fuyumi was the real secret admirer. The problem is, Fuyumi's already out of there. She took off right after Kunio, still salty from Akane's rejection, let a few sharp words slip. And just like that, the love story that could have been ends before it even starts. The next episode is called Revolution Everywhere, and we begin with Miss Azusa getting the mean girl treatment from her own students. Why? Because she's too friendly with the boys, and the boys love attending her class. That's it. The girls just hate having to compete with their teacher for the boys' attention. The girls start sending her nasty letters, giving her the cold shoulder, and even boycotting her class until she quits. And it almost works. Azusa starts breaking down and vents to Onizuka, saying she wishes she could deal with troublemakers like he does. Onizuka, in a moment of world-class bad advice, just shrugs and tells her, if you can't handle it, maybe quit teaching. An advice he soon regrets, because the next thing he knows, Azusa has completely vanished. Uh-oh, not resigned, just straight up disappeared. Onizuka, Tomoko, Kunio, and Yoshito literally break into her house, rummage around, and find some clues pointing to a small village called Hakuba, where Azusa used to teach. The group packs up and heads over there to bring her back, but Azusa isn't returning so soon as she's got some unfinished business. Turns out, one of her old students, Hitomi, now suddenly hates teachers with a passion. Why? Because a long time ago, her favorite teacher, Miss Sagara, got caught in an affair with a married colleague and then bailed, leaving Hitomi feeling lonely and abandoned.
She quit teaching right before we graduated. She must have gone off somewhere with him. She's that kind of person.
On top of that, the school Azusa once taught at is about to be demolished. So now, Azusa's got a blast from the past problem to solve before she can even think about returning to Holy Forest Academy. The next episode, titled The Art of Demolition, is basically about helping a kid who's stuck living in the past. Specifically, Hitomi and her not-so-healthy obsession with her old teacher, Miss Sagara. Everyone loved Miss Sagara back in the day, but she was the kind of teacher kids actually looked forward to seeing. But when word got out that she was having an affair with a married coworker, she bailed with her lover without even saying a goodbye to her students. For Hitomi, the affair was bad, but disappearing without a word? Now that was the real betrayal. Onizuka steps in with some wisdom that only he could deliver. He makes her understand that those happy memories with Miss Sagara aren't going anywhere, so just hang on to those instead. And yeah, cheating is a mistake, but people screw up sometimes, even teachers. In other words, stop living in the past and start enjoying the now.
Okay, so adultery may not be such a good thing, but teachers are human too, just like everybody else. You know, they might even make a mistake or two, especially when they're in love.
Hitomi seems to get it until she hears the sirens signaling her old school's demolition. Suddenly, she bolts into the soon-to-explode building to save a giant musical organ that reminds her of Miss Sagara. Onizuka charges in after her on a motorbike, because of course he does, and finds her clinging to the organ. She refuses to leave it behind, so he hoists the thing up and makes a break for it. When the explosion starts, he chucks the organ to save them both. It smashes to bits before even hitting the ground, except for one single key. Onizuka gives the key to Hitomi, letting her keep a piece of her memories without carrying the whole heavy past around. Azusa, watching all this go down, thanks Onizuka and decides she's ready to return to the academy. Episode 23 is called Superstition. This one's actually a filler episode, so we don't have to dwell too much on it, but it involves our main character, so it's worth talking about. Anyway, one day, creepy chain letters start showing up at the academy, and Onizuka gets an entire box full of them. His student buddies think the letters are cursed for real. Onizuka laughs it off at first, calling it all superstitious nonsense, up until his life turns into a bad slapstick comedy. One thing after another goes terribly wrong, including near-death experiences. And suddenly, our tough guy MC starts thinking, maybe this curse is real. But his bad luck only gets worse. So bad that he ends up in the hospital. There, the doctors convince him he's dying of cancer. So how does Onizuka react to this devastating news? He busts out of the hospital and goes on an epic farewell party spree, ready to live it up before his final day. His student buddies eventually drop the truth bomb. He's actually perfectly fine. No cancer, no curses, just bad luck and a terribly wild imagination. Yikes. The next episode, titled Compromising Positions, kicks off with Vice Principal Uchiyamada deep in a midlife crisis. And honestly, Onizuka is the gasoline on that fire. First, Onizuka has his students paint a massive mural of a sexy woman at school. Then, just when Uchiyamada thinks the day can't get any worse, he comes home to find Onizuka casually chatting with his wife like they're old friends. Turns out, Chairwoman Sakurai sent Onizuka over to drop off some paperwork, but Uchiyamada isn't buying it. Unfortunately, his wife and his young daughter Yoshiko are already laughing at Onizuka's jokes, and to add salt to injury, Uchiyamada's wife actually invites Onizuka to tutor Yoshiko. From Uchiyamada's point of view, this isn't tutoring, it's a full-blown family invasion by a monster. A hostile takeover, if you will.
What just happened? How was that beast able to deceive both my wife and my daughter?
The next day, he hears a juicy rumor. Onizuka was spotted in the hotel district of Shibuya with a young female student. Bingo! This is his chance to get Onizuka fired. He reports the breaking news to the chairwoman and has the witness show her photographic evidence. Sakurai then calls for a board meeting to decide Onizuka's fate, and then comes the twist. Uchiyamada takes a closer look at the photo and realizes the female student isn't just any student, it's his own daughter. Oof. Now in full panic mode, he races to find them. His search somehow leads him into a costume party where he gets shoved into a gorilla suit. He quickly takes off into the streets and the police mistake him for an actual gorilla on a rampage and start chasing him. He ditches the costume, but forgets to put anything else on, meaning he's now flashing every soul he comes across. Jeez. Finally, Onizuka and Yoshiko show up. Onizuka quickly shields Yoshiko from seeing her dad in all his glory, and at the same time, Uchiyamada finally learns the truth. The duo weren't in Shibuya for anything shady. Onizuka was just taking Yoshiko to a concert she likes.
Then that photo was taken when she came to see a concert.
We'd better get going. My father is real strict when it comes to being home on time.
Before leaving, Onizuka hands him a raincoat to spare whatever is left of his dignity. The next day, Uchiyamada does the unthinkable. He actually defends Onizuka to the chairwoman, calling him a good teacher and begging her to call off the board meeting. Just wow, who would have thought this day would come? Episode 25 is called Playing Doctor GTO Style. This episode is pure filler, but at least it comes with eye candy in the form of the school nurse Nao Kadena. Onizuka, of course, is over the moon about it, but instead of just taking temperatures and handing out band-aids, Nao turns the nurse's office into her own personal Amazon outlet, selling beauty cream, diet supplements, and even Lucky Charms to students. Yeah, that can't be legal, right? Anyway, Onizuka's pal Ryuji remembers exactly where he's seen her before, behind the wheel of a street racing car. She used to be a legendary racer until some weird accident made her lose a big race, after which she just disappeared. Now, she's back in the game, except the game is selling snake oil to teenagers. Episode 26 is called Onizuka Meets His Match. Barely up to a month after she started working, Nurse Nao has decided to quit her job at the academy. She proudly tells Onizuka and Azusa that she's saved up 3 million yen for her younger brother's surgery. He got injured in a street race a long time ago and still has bits of metal lodged in his body. Unfortunately, Nao's financial victory is short-lived. The surgery arrangements turns out to be part of a medical scam, and just like that, all her money's gone in an instant. Nao falls into a deep depression, but Onizuka isn't about to let her stay there. His brand of therapy is to challenge her to a racing game to remind her of her own worth. They go head-to-head and eventually end in a tie. Nao admits she's impressed and mentions that she's heard stories about his day as the leader of the Onibaku biker gang. And with a little help from Ryuji, Nao reunites with her brother, who tells her not to worry about his surgery anymore. He'll find a way to pay for it himself. Feeling lighter and more motivated, Nao decides to stay at the academy after all. The next episode, titled GTO, Agent to the Stars, isn't in the manga as well, but it proves that Onizuka isn't just a teacher. He's also out here making people's dreams come true. This time, the lucky dreamer is none other than Tomoko. After her debut on the big screen gets annulled, she's feeling pretty crushed. But Onizuka, never one to sit back and watch, shoves her useless manager aside and declares himself as her manager. Thank you very much. And his genius plan is to simply start small. He books her for a bunch of harmless little commercials selling fruits and veggies on local TV all across Japan. Before long, Tomoko's sweet, slightly clueless charm wins over audiences, and her face is popping up everywhere. The buzz catches the attention of the popular weekly shonen magazine, who invite her to compete in their magazine glossy princess contest, or MGPC. Basically, a battle between 12 gorgeous women where readers vote for the next superstar of the 21st century. With Onizuka in her corner, Tomoko might just pull it off. The next episode, titled Whatever Can Go Wrong, Will Go Wrong, wraps up our little filler adventure. Onizuka is determined to make Tomoko the queen of this beauty contest. He even recruits a whole bunch of biker gangs to vote en masse for his student. Unfortunately, Tomoko's main rival, Megumi Hashino, has something even more dangerous than biker gang loyalty: a mega corporation in her corner. The guys from the corporation aren't just playing the game, they are the game. They rig the vote counting and surprise, surprise, Megumi is announced the winner. The thing is, the audience isn't buying it. They're all clearly Team Tomoko, and when they smell the scam, they walk out before the ceremony even ends. Sure, she didn't get the crown, but Tomoko left with the crowd's love, and maybe that's the real win. The next episode, titled Studies in High Finance, is basically Miyabi's latest Get Onizuka Fired master plan, only this time it's meaner, messier, and way more expensive. Clearly, this young lady has no hobbies outside ruining one man's career. She's still salty about her friends jumping ship. First, Yoshito switched sides, then Kunio, and now Urumi.
If you want to get Onizuka fired that much, you're just gonna have to do it by yourself, that's all. Or is it possible you can't do anything alone?
So Miyabi decides it's time for a knockout punch involving grand larceny. She and her friends somehow steal over 1 million yen from Kunio's buddy Fujiyoshi, the money meant for the Academy's annual class field trip, and pin it all on Onizuka. To pull it off, she blackmails poor Mr. Sakurada, the English teacher who's been secretly living a double life as a crossdresser. Miyabi gets some rather interesting photos of him and basically says, "Nice little secret you've got there. Be a shame if it leaked." Real wholesome behavior, you get it. Onizuka does find the stolen cash in his room, but has no idea how it got there, so he just stuffs a few notes in his pocket. After planting the stolen cash in Onizuka's room, Miyabi forces Sakurada to lure Onizuka to an underground girls' club. This girls' club is made up of schoolgirls wearing uniforms, and some of them wear just their underwear. Onizuka can't wait to see these girls because he's a freaking pervert. Once there, the girls get him drunk, strip him down to his underwear, and dump him on a pile of garbage after he passes out. So, to recap, Miyabi and her friends just committed grand theft, blackmail, illegal dumping, and public humiliation. But sure, Onizuka's the problem. The next episode is called Money Talks, GTO Walks. Fujiyoshi is freaking out because he thinks he lost the class field trip money, over 1 million yen.
Mr. Onizuka? Help me! What am I gonna do, dude? Everyone's calling me a thief. I didn't steal it. I didn't, I swear.
Meanwhile, Onizuka remembers that the same amount of money magically showed up in his room. The problem is, he already spent part of it during a wild night out. At first, Onizuka is too embarrassed to admit what happened, but he eventually confides in Kunio and his friend Kusano. Onizuka promises that he'll find a way to get the money back, but before he can fix things, Fujiyoshi disappears and leaves behind a typed suicide note. Huh? Urumi figures out right away that the note is fake. Whew. Fujiyoshi doesn't even own a computer. She's sure it's all part of Miyabi's latest plan to get Onizuka fired. Because honestly, nobody in the school hates the great teacher more than she does. And as if things aren't bad enough, explicit posters start popping up all over school, showing Onizuka at an underground girls' club, passed out and surrounded by cash. Not a good look for a teacher. And now, rumors are flying that he really did steal the trip money. But here's the twist. Anko Uehara, one of Miyabi's old partners in bullying and a former card-carrying member of the Onizuka Haters Club, has since done a complete 180. She spills everything about Miyabi's little plot and even helps track down Fujiyoshi.
You're wasting your time looking for him around here.
Huh?
Listen to me, you're not gonna find Fujiyoshi here.
When they track him down, Fujiyoshi still feels like he messed up because he actually spent 50,000 yen from the trip money on a cool watch he's always wanted. So, with all that drama, Chairwoman Sakurai calls for a school assembly so the students can vote on whether Onizuka gets to keep his job, given that the entire controversy involves students' money. Because, of course, nothing could possibly go wrong when teenagers are in charge of deciding a teacher's future. Episode 31 is called Destination Okinawa. We kick off with Chairwoman Sakurai grilling Mr. Sakurura about his sketchy decision to collect the school trip money entirely in cash. Mr. Sakurura claims the trip organizers insisted on cash this year, which sounds suspicious enough. But before she can ask any more questions, he fakes a migraine and runs out like a guilty cartoon villain. Meanwhile, Onizuka strolls into the academy and tells his student allies to drop the idea of exposing Miyabi's scheme. If the school finds out he got played by a bunch of teenagers, it would most certainly ruin his street cred, and we can't have that. Instead, he goes for a bold and definitely insane plan B. During the school assembly, he straight up admits to embezzling the money.
That's right, I really did it. I sit up here guilty as charged.
Are you proud of it?
Then he promises to make it up to the third-year students with an all-expenses paid trip to Okinawa. Sounds nice, right? Well, it's gonna cost about 8 million yen. 8 million. Onizuka confidently claims he can pay for it with a winning lottery ticket, but of course, the ticket turns out to be a fraudulent scam. Now, he's got 1 week to magically produce 8 million yen. Thanks to Chairwoman Sakurai's strict deadline, Onizuka's life suddenly turns into a montage of desperation. From trying to hustle a casino, to breaking his back at a construction site, to then betting on horse races. He's basically just throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. Seeing how hopeless the situation is, Anko and Noboru offer to chip in a few millions, but Onizuka refuses, saying a teacher shouldn't borrow from his students. Aww. He then turns to his old buddy Ryuji for a loan, only to get shut down because he still hasn't repaid the last one. Onizuka calls it a betrayal because owing people money indefinitely is just part of friendship, apparently. The next episode is called The Law of Probability. It starts with Urumi visiting Miyabi, and the two immediately start verbally swinging at each other. Miyabi's still nursing her lifelong grudge against teachers because of what happened of a friend of theirs in the past. Better note this down, because this friend will be talked about pretty soon. Anyway, Urumi says that she has already moved on from the past and insists that Onizuka isn't like the other teachers. Miyabi doesn't care, and even threatens to spill some dirt about Urumi's dad if she gets in her way. Urumi, not one to be intimidated, warns Miyabi right back that crossing her is a very bad idea.
Miyabi, I don't think making me angry would be a very smart move on your part.
The next day, Onizuka rolls into the academy like a champ, driving a shiny Mercedes-Benz E-Class sedan that he won in a local contest. It's worth at least 8 million yen, which means selling it would completely cover the Okinawa trip. Naturally, Miyabi can't let this stand. Since her dad manages a local bank's finance division, Miyabi starts digging into her dad's bank files and finds a desperate small business owner named Hiromatsu, who just had his loan rejected and is strapped for cash. Miyabi strikes a deal with him. All he has to do is jump in front of Onizuka's car while he's driving. Girl, aren't you supposed to be doing some homework or something? Damn! Anyway, sure enough, while Onizuka's driving, Hiromatsu strolls out of the dark like he's auditioning for an action movie stunt, and Onizuka has no choice but to swerve into a pole. The car gets damaged, and Onizuka's now furious, until he hears Hiromatsu's sob story about his factory going bankrupt. When he finds out the guy used to be a passionate teacher as well, Onizuka's soft spot for a fellow educator kicks in. Instead of selling the car, he lets Hiromatsu have it so the man can sell it himself and settle his factory problems. Oh, and Onizuka expects the man to pay him back within 3 days. You know, somehow. Urumi and the boys are shocked when they find out Onizuka basically gave away his golden ticket. But now, Urumi's just annoyed at Miyabi for pushing things too far. She's officially out for blood. About damn time, honestly. The next episode is titled Search and Rescue. We begin with Urumi tricking Miyabi and her crew to lodge in a hotel under the pretense of celebrating their latest scheme against Onizuka. Naturally, the celebration quickly turns into a full-blown frickin' kidnapping. Urumi's grand plan is to ransom them for 60 million yen, with 8 million set aside to fund Onizuka's school trip.
I think their parents will be more than happy to pay a ransom for their precious children.
Hey, you don't mean you've gone too far.
Yeah. Suddenly, the tables have turned. Yoshito and Kunio want no part of this disaster, so they call Onizuka, who at that moment is casually working his butt off to raise money. And by working, I mean cleaning windows on a skyscraper. In true Onizuka fashion, fate delivers a ridiculous solution. A passing airship just happens to float by. He grabs a rope, hitches a ride, and ends up swinging straight into the kidnapper's hotel hideout, smashing into the glass walls like he's Tarzan or something. Before lifting a finger to save anyone, however, Onizuka takes the opportunity to mock Miyabi and demand an apology for framing him. She begrudgingly chokes out the apology, and that's all Onizuka needs before he starts laying waste to the kidnappers. With only 1 day left before the trip deadline, Onizuka does the unthinkable. He decides to hand in his resignation letter to Chairwoman Sakurai. Sad as it may be, he hopes to teach his students a lesson about taking personal responsibility for their actions. But then again, isn't this kinda like quitting right before the finish line? Oh well. We do find out that Hiromatsu has sent someone over to the academy to pay back the 8 million yen, which is some much needed good news. The episode wraps up with Azusa, Urumi, Kunio, and the others crying their eyes out and running after Onizuka as he sails away on a ship. Then, Yoshito casually points out that Onizuka is actually on a fishing vessel, and that vessel will return in 2 hours. So, all hope is not lost. Hopefully. Episode 34 is called Good Cop, Bad Cop. This one's a filler episode, but it's a fun one. This time, the spotlight is on Onizuka, Tomoko, and Saejima, the world's most questionable police officer and Onizuka's partner in chaos. The three of them somehow get caught up with some angry Yakuza goons who are hunting down their missing stash of gold. So what follows is basically a wacky game of cat and mouse, with Onizuka, Tomoko, and Saejima scrambling to escape while looking like the least competent fugitives ever. Jeez. Here's the kicker though. The trio don't realize the whole thing is staged. Yeah, it's all part of an elaborate TV prank show. So while they're sweating bullets, dodging gangsters, and probably questioning their life choices, there's a camera crew somewhere laughing their heads off. Anyway, moving on to the next one. The next episode is called Wedding Bell Blues, and it's all about Kunio losing his mind over his mom's love life. Or at least what he thinks is her love life. Kunio and his buddies notice that his mom, Julia, has been hanging around a wedding chapel with some much older guy. When Kunio finds a wedding dress catalog in her bag, he's even convinced that she's secretly planning to marry some wrinkly old man without even telling him. To stop this from happening, Kunio throws on a disguise and stalks his mom like he's in some kind of undercover spy movie. He barges into the chapel just in time to see her in a wedding dress, standing beside the mystery grandpa. Kunio flips out and tries to attack the guy, but we get a plot twist. Julia isn't getting married. What? Turns out she's just modeling wedding dresses for the old man's company. That's it. No secret wedding, no new dad, just a job gig. And the old guy, instead of being offended, he's actually flattered. I mean, what's better than having some punk kid think you scored a woman way out of your league? The next episode, titled Self-Improvement, puts poor Azusa through an emotional roller coaster over something as simple as a swimsuit. It starts with her getting excited about the Okinawa trip that's in less than 24 hours. But then, she overhears a couple of boys complaining that Nurse Nao won't be there to show off her beautiful body in a swimsuit. To make it worse, the boys add that it's too bad Azusa will be there, and she's not exactly swimsuit material. Ouch! Then, Onizuka casually says something along the same lines, and Azusa's confidence completely crumbles.
I may not be going, but Miss Fuyutsuki will be there.
Huh? Fuyutsuki? Oh yeah, I forgot about her.
Because Azusa secretly has a crush on Onizuka. She begs Nao for help. Nao happily takes her shopping for sexy swimsuits and encourages her to show off a more daring sexual side. Azusa goes all in, but the makeover turns out to be a little too intense. She ends up looking so overdone and overly tanned that even she gets freaked out. Embarrassed, she decides not to go on the trip at all, but just when she's about to give up, Nao steps in and fixes the disaster. By next morning, Nao drags her to the school, but the fix backfires. Azusa shows up looking so ghostly pale, she could give Snow White a run for her money. Everyone stares at her in shock, Onizuka included, and Azusa breaks down in tears. At this point, she's convinced she'd rather die than show her face in Okinawa looking like that. The next episode, titled Living Together, takes us to sunny Okinawa, a gorgeous paradise where everyone's ready to have fun. Well, everyone except Noboru. The poor guy is being bossed around by Anko and her little clique. Onizuka takes notice of this and decides to help in the only way he knows how, by making things more, chaotic. He assigns boys and girls to the same hotel rooms, which shock the students, because, let's be honest, no teacher in their right mind would allow this. But Onizuka is the sponsor of the trip, so he makes the rules. Naturally, he sticks Noboru in a room with Anko and her two friends just to stir their drama. When bedtime comes, the girls kick Noboru out to sleep on the balcony like he's some stray dog. Noboru sulks in misery until Onizuka shows up to man him up. Step 1 in Onizuka's plan involves peeping on the girls as they're changing into their pajamas. Of course, Noboru gets caught red-handed while Onizuka conveniently vanishes, leaving him to face Anko's wrath alone. Yikes. But Onizuka isn't done yet. Step 2 in his plan to get some payback involves helping Noboru to stage a fake suicide. While Anko and her friends are nervously debating whether locking Noboru out was too harsh, since he actually has a history of trying to off himself, they suddenly spot what looks like his hanging silhouette.
Oh no, he did it! He hung himself! No way!
They freak out, rush to the balcony, and suddenly a zombified Noboru drops in from above, groaning like the undead. The girls scream their lungs out while Onizuka films the whole thing, laughing like it's the funniest thing he's ever seen. In the end, Noboru actually enjoys getting the upper hand. But since this is his life and balance must be restored, he still ends up with a beating for humiliating the girls. So yeah, even when he wins, it's to his own detriment. The next episode, called Great Treasure Okinawa, kicks off with Onizuka catching wind of some legendary hidden treasure worth a cool billion yen buried on a nearby island. Naturally, he immediately decides this is the perfect excuse for a special class trip. Of course, there's a catch. The island supposedly has a curse. But does that stop Onizuka? Please. He's more worried about people accusing him of child labor. So, he tricks the students into thinking they're there to research sea turtle eggs, which basically means free labor with shovels while he dreams of swimming in cash. Urumi, being way too smart for this nonsense, figures it out and teaches Onizuka a lesson. She lures him into a pit, has him buried up to his neck, and exposes his plot to the other students who start laughing at him as he begs for mercy.
Alright, I'll stop the treasure hunts immediately, I promise! Just get the snake off me! I hate snakes!
Meanwhile, Anko still hasn't let go of Noboru's zombie prank from the last episode. So, she and her crew force him to wear a shirt that says loser on it, then blindfold and tie him up, then dump him in the middle of the jungle. It's all cute and funny, except they get themselves lost in the process. Karma, anyone? With no other choice, they untie Noboru and ask him to lead them back to where they came from. The problem is, he's been blindfolded this entire time, so his sense of direction is about as reliable as a broken compass. He ends up guiding them straight to a cliff, nowhere near Onizuka's group. Oopsie. Anko decides the best plan is to climb down to the shore and walk all the way back around. But nature has other plans. She gets sucked into a whirlpool and dragged down a pit of water. Shockingly, Noboru, the same kid they treat like garbage, jumps in after her without hesitation, proving he's braver than all of them combined. Godspeed, Noboru! The next episode is called Alone in the Dark, and it picks up right after the last cliffhanger. Noboru actually proves himself to be the hero, dragging Anko to safety inside a cave. And how does Anko repay him? By trying to smash his head with a boulder. Because obviously, saving her life isn't good enough when you're still mad about a zombie prank from 2 freaking days ago. Meanwhile, back on the island, a search party sets off to find the missing kids. Onizuka, however, is still paying for his fake sea turtle research scam. Urumi has him on a leash. Literally. Using him like some oversized pet mule. But the second Anko's sidekicks stumble out of the bushes and explain what happened at the cliff, Onizuka suddenly snaps out of slave mode and bolts ahead to research. And no, it's not because he's a caring teacher worried sick about his students' safety. It's because he's convinced they probably found the treasure and are trying to hide it from him. Priorities, right? When he finally tracks them down in a cave, Onizuka goes full gold digger and grabs the first box-shaped thing he sees. Unfortunately, it's not treasure. It's an old undetonated bomb from who knows how many decades ago. Of course, it goes off, because that's just Onizuka's luck. But somehow everyone survives the blast. Yeah, the plot armor's pretty strong with this one. The next episode, titled Matters of the Heart, takes a softer turn. After the whole life or death cave drama, Anko starts catching feelings for Noboru. Yeah, the same guy she used to bully like it was her full-time job is now starring in her dreams. She even sleep talks his name at night. And of course, Onizuka, being Onizuka, records the whole thing for future blackmail. Evidence. At the beach, Noboru accidentally smacks her with a ball, and instead of yelling at him like usual, she just brushes it off. Character development, people! Let's go! She even tells her friend to back off Noboru because she doesn't want Onizuka stepping in to retaliate on his behalf. That's a plausible excuse, or maybe she just doesn't want anyone bothering her new crush. Things get even spicier when Anko starts suspecting that another girl might be eyeing Noboru. In actual fact, it's all in her head, and jealousy can be a bitch. Observing this love crisis from afar is Onizuka, who's ever the meddling teacher. He sees this as his chance to play matchmaker, and with him in charge, you know it's either gonna be true love or a complete disaster. The following episode, called Confessions, wraps up the Okinawa trip with Onizuka being, well, Onizuka. On the last night, he wakes up everyone and drags them to an abandoned resort for a special game he made up called Face Your Fears. The rules are simple. Go down to the basement of the resort and sign your name in a notebook. But of course, he adds his own twisted condition. Everyone has to wear swimsuits so that when the girls get scared and cling to the boys, there's more physical contact. Truly, this man should not be left alone around children. So anyway, Noboru gets paired with Anko, and unlike the others, he refuses to wear a swimsuit because he knows his teacher's schemes all too well. While walking through the resort, a headless biker zooms past them, making Anko scream and throw herself onto Noboru. The second she realizes what she's doing, she forcibly shoves him away like it was his fault. Onizuka, aka the headless biker, witnesses all this and concludes that Anko is not being honest about her feelings, and that she needs one final push. Soon enough, Noboru and Anko are wandering through a field, holding hands without even realizing it. Anko catches herself enjoying the moment, though she'll never admit it out loud. That's when 4 thugs suddenly jump them. Noboru tries to act brave but gets knocked out instantly. Anko rushes to protect him, and when the thugs mock her for being with such a weak guy, she loses it and defends Noboru. In the heat of the moment, she finally confesses her feelings.
Are you saying that you really love that guy, huh?
That's right! I love him!
Then comes the big reveal. The thugs are just Onizuka, Kunio, Fujiyoshi, and Kusano in disguise. Onizuka made sure to catch Anko's confession with a recording device. Anko panics at the prospect of being teased at school, but Onizuka brushes off her concerns and hands her the confession tape, telling her that it's something she'll want to remember one day. And just when Onizuka starts grinning at his own genius, Noboru wakes up and smacks him in the head with a rock for hitting him too hard during the prank. So, in the end, the trip gave us romance, a confession, and yet another reason to question how Onizuka still has a teaching license. The next episode, titled Old Wounds Revisited, may technically be filler, but it explains a huge reason why Class 3-4 hates teachers with the burning passion of 1,000 suns. The culprit is their old homeroom teacher, Mr. Noboru Saito. About a year ago, Saito had an affair with one of Miyabi's close friends, Mizuki Yokoyama. Eventually, the whole thing blew up in his face, and he was forced out of Holy Forest Academy. He swore he wouldn't abandon Mizuki, but surprise, surprise, he totally did. To make things worse, Mizuki was pregnant at the time. Feeling hopeless and abandoned, she ended up taking her own life.
Don't you know? She was pregnant!
Fast forward to the now times. Miyabi discovers two things. First, Mizuki's pregnancy. And second, that Saito somehow weaseled his way back into teaching at another private school. His teaching license should have been revoked, but apparently one big-shot Board of Education member decided Saito deserved another chance. Naturally, Miyabi is furious. Saito ends up in the hospital with stab wounds. The show never confirms if she did it though. But Miyabi isn't done. She storms up to the board member who pulled the strings for Saito, knife in hand, ready to make it crystal clear she's not messing around. Before the situation turns into an episode of true crime, Onizuka shows up with the Holy Forest crew to stop her. The board member demands Miyabi be handed over to the cops, but Onizuka refuses, saying he'll deal with Miyabi himself. This act of insubordination, of course, doesn't sit well with the Board of Education. Onizuka is falsely accused of assaulting the board member, and now Chairwoman Sakurai is put in a brutal spot. Either sacrifice Onizuka and Miyabi to keep the school open, or the school will be shut down for good. Damn. The last episode of the series is called Onizuka's Final Battle. We start off with the teachers at Holy Forest Academy having a meeting to decide and vote on the next course of action. Azusa and Nao try to argue that the Board of Education doesn't even have the right to boss them around like this. Uchimiyata, as usual, just wants to wrap things up quickly so he can keep his job and not have to deal with Onizuka. But Chairwoman Sakurai isn't backing down easily. She decides there won't be a vote just yet, because she's putting all her faith in, you guessed it, Onizuka, wherever that lunatic may be. Consequently, as Sakurai faces the almighty Board of Education, she refuses to fulfill their demands. First things first, for all they knew, Mr. Saito wasn't stabbed by anyone. He could have stabbed himself. Why? Because according to Sakurai, Mr. Saito genuinely loved Mizuki, and after learning of Mizuki's suicide, he probably started drowning in guilt.
Deep down, Mr. Saito truly loved Miss Yokoyama. And when he heard the devastating news that Miss Yokoyama committed suicide, he felt he had to do the same.
He had promised the school to stick by her, but when the Board of Education pressured him to end it, he bailed on Mizuki publicly. So, yeah, if anyone's to blame for Mizuki's death, it's the board for pressuring Mr. Saito. Naturally, the board does not appreciate being called out for potentially driving someone to suicide. Meanwhile, the Holy Forest students are low-key playing detectives. Nobody manages to hack into Saito's account on the Board of Education's website, because apparently these kids can do anything, and finds a message where Saito says he still loved Mizuki and was waiting for the right time to be with her properly. In other words, he never actually abandoned her. It was the system that did. Back at the Board of Education meeting, Onizuka bursts into the scene like a wrecking ball, having dragged reporters into the building. Suddenly, the board members are sweating bullets as the press starts hammering them with with awkward questions about their role in the death of Mizuki. But Onizuka isn't done yet. On live television, he casually announces that he was the one who stabbed Mr. Saito. Yeah, you heard that right.
I'm the one who stabbed the guy. The name's Eikichi Onizuka. I'm the one who stabbed the guy. The name's Eikichi Onizuka.
His brilliant plan to save Miyabi from jail is to just confess to attempted murder on national TV. Thankfully, we do learn that Mr. Saito has finally woken up at the hospital. As Onizuka's dragged off to the police car, Miyabi runs up to him, torn between gratitude and shock. But before the cops can even slam the door, Onizuka makes his great escape, yelling that he's not dumb enough to actually go to prison. So, it turns out the great teacher does have his limits when it comes to saving his students whenever they screw up. And that's how the legend of Great Teacher Onizuka ends. Turbulent, reckless, and unforgettable. This is the story of a guy you'd never hire to teach your kids. He's a total pervert. His brain power barely hits room temperature, and half the time he's just plain embarrassing. But here's the twist. Somehow, against all odds, he always comes through for his students. But anyway, I will let you decide what you think about him in the end. You can click on the screen to watch another one of my videos, by the way.